In this video, Myron and Candace Owens discuss how feminism is changing women for the worse.
That on camera that she literally quit like not too long after you did that show, so that's great, saving lives.
That makes me happy.
So kind of with that, I saw that you had did a debate on Jubilee with a bunch of feminists. Obviously we're in a modern day age, things have changed quite a bit. We've both been pretty critical of feminism, but I think with what you're doing, you're able to really reach a demographic of women that just guys like me and Andrew Tate and others just aren't going to reach because, we're abrasive in the way that we get it. So they might want, another female's perspective on, the detriments of feminism and everything else like that. So kind of given how society is now, how do you see feminism today with young women? And then what do you predict is going to happen in the next 5-10 years? Are we getting better? Is it getting worse? What are your thoughts in general on that?
So I was actually very interested in Tate culture, as I'm going to call it. So I'm going to put you in that orbit of Tate culture, all of these male influencers that were coming out and calling girls bitchs and hoes and all this stuff. And people sat back and were like, oh my God, this is horrible, whatever. But I'm like, wait a second, whatever you think about him, whatever you think about Tristan, whatever you think about Myron, this culture got very big very quickly, and there's got to be something there, right? There has to be. So that was the reason why I flew out to meet Andrew Tate. There was all these conspiracies that I knew him before and all. I met Andrew a total of 2 times before I did his show. My husband hung out with him maybe 3 times in his life before him and I met. He was actually friends with PJW. And that's how I met Andrew.
Gotcha.
Like, so my husband was actually friends with PJW. And I just wanted to know what it was, because I'm never a person that will dismiss something on its face and call it a name. Like, there has to be some substance here. And what was actually happening was you got Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate and you got Myron Gaines because you perpetuated a culture of Lena Dunhams, right? So you're acting like men just got tired of it, is what happened. And finally, men looked around and somebody stood up and said, it's actually okay to be a man and you don't have to listen to any of these women. Now, you may not have liked how they said it. You may not have liked that they were doing this on top of Lamborghinis. But the reality is that what sat beneath that was a horribly toxic culture where women were dictating the terms to men. And every time a man did something that actually felt natural to them, you called it toxic masculinity, and books were written, and Lena Dunham's writing articles, and there's a show about this, and Lena Dunham's naked on Instagram. I wrote a whole chapter about Lena Dunham in my book, and she's naked on Instagram, and she's lecturing you if you don't want to see her, overweight, naked, and tatted up. So you can't blame the culture, Tate culture, until you are ready to address where this actually came from, which was women constantly bashing men over the head and telling them that masculinity, full stop, was wrong.
Given the problems that we have, obviously, whether it's me or Tate or other people, will kind of come in and say, hey, this is what you need to do as a guy. This is how the modern day marketplace is now when it comes to dating. What's your approach to kind of combating this problem from a female perspective?
First, you have to understand the origin of feminism, right? You have to understand that this was not a culture and an ideology that came because they wanted women to have equal rights with men, okay? This was a CIA-sponsored PSYOP. Gloria Steinem was sponsored by the CIA, okay? These protests were sponsored by men in government. A lot of them homosexual, actually. And the reason for that was simply because they wanted to tax, it was actually twofold, I would say. They wanted to tax household income both ways. And also they wanted women to, instead of focusing on their kids, which comes natural to women, right, to be the quote unquote, like I say, CEO of the household, they wanted to remove that and to have the children given to the government for 6 hours a day. Beyond 6 hours a day, 6 hours a day, plus whatever sports activities, which gives the government full control over the minds of the children. This came straight from the Pale of Settlement. After they assassinated the Tsar, you had these Jewish women like Emma Goldman, who came over to America. Emma Goldman was the mentor to what's her face from Planned Parenthood. I'm blanking on her name for a moment. I'm going to say Margaret Sanger. That was her mentor. Mm-hmm. And so this was, in fact, a very radical communist movement that came to America and sought to overthrow families, family institutions, strong men, feminine women, stands in the way of government and absolute control.
In your book, Make 'Em a Sandwich, what are some of the things that you tell the women? Because I'm assuming it's a book that's going to be centered around how women can kind of get in the marketplace, find a long-term partner, get married. what are some of the strategies that you tell women to implement to find a partner? You don't have to give it all away.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
one
it's
or
fine.
two.
I don't even try in my book to sell them a strategy or a technique. I just tell the truth. So here's the history of feminism. Here's what we were told in school. Here's actually how it went down, right? Knowledge is power. I give them the actual statistics, the fact that what was sold to you was you were going to be just like a man and you were going to be happier. Women are actually more miserable than they've ever been. If you go back and you ask most women about their grandmothers, they remember grandma being happy, right? So what they actually sold to you, now you've achieved this equality, quote unquote equality, and women have never been more miserable, and women are popping more pills than they were popping and finding it harder to find a partner and wondering why. Well, it's because you attacked natural masculinity. You told men that they shouldn't be allowed to lead. Women have to lead. And actually, you didn't want that, right? You were convinced psychologically in a classroom, as I was back when I wanted to be a feminist, or I thought feminism was cool. And you should know that. And I think that that's how you change things without trying to say, here's a strategy and here's how we're going to move forward. Let people know true knowledge, let people know true history. And I think the rest of the stuff happens naturally, or I hope.
For you on your journey, when did you figure out that feminism was a lie? Like, was there a certain event that triggered it that you were like, holy crap, this is BS?
I actually tell the story in this book. I think I do, actually. I think it's in this book, or it's in my last book, actually. It's in Blackout, of this teacher that I had. And I was required to take a Feminism 101. It was called Women's Studies. Maybe it was Women's Studies 201 at the University of Rhode Island. And at that time, I was like, yeah, I'm a feminist, of course. Who doesn't want equality as they sold it?
Yeah.
I get into this classroom, and this teacher, I realized very quickly, was not actually motivated by wanting equality. I was in a classroom where she was trying to convince me that every problem that we had in society was due to men. This was a literal class that was designed to basically teach women to hate men.
Yeah.
Like, no matter, all you had to do to get an A was she would introduce any problem. She could have lost her keys that morning and been like, why did this happen?
Patriarchy.
Well, you know who designed cars? You know who designed cars? Do you know who designed the whole concept of a car key, and who designed the couch that you lost it in this morning? It was men. It became to a point where for me, it was like laughable.
Yeah.
But there was this one particular class where it clicked for me. Because when I was in college, I had an eating disorder. So I was sitting in her class, and I was anorexic, and she gets into this topic of anorexia and eating disorders. And she gave us some statistic about the percentage of women that have eating disorders. And I'm making this up now, but it was something like 80% of people who have eating disorders are women. And she asked the class, why is that? And we were supposed to say, and she did say, that it was because men control the advertising agency and men want women to be skinny. And it had literally, I'm sitting here having this experience, nothing to do with a man. Like nothing, no man said you're fat, you have to be skinny. That is completely made up. And I'm listening to her try to psychologically convince me that my eating disorder came from a man when it just factually didn't. Most people who suffer with anorexia know it's a control mechanism. It actually has nothing even to do with weight. It just is like, this is the one thing you can control. And I just kind of called her out on that, and I raised my hand. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, well, let's look at another statistic. What percentage of people are juicing up with steroids, right? That's not a super healthy thing to do. If we said that 90% of it was men, would you have presented to the class that it was because of women, right? Because women are telling them they have to look like this. And she was, when I say she went white, and she said to me, and I always tell the story on stage, she said to me, I feel like you were sent to me from the men's department.
Of course.
Yeah. And I told her back that I was sent to her from the common sense department.
Yeah.
And that everything couldn't be because of men. So I think that was kind of the first time that it clicked for me that this was some sort of a psychological program.